Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning to the honorable members, the colleagues, the National Commissioner, the head of the SIU, and all the other parties present. From the DPCI, I'm accompanied by the component head of serious commercial crime, which is Major General Maginyane sitting on my left. Chairperson, we have got, we prepared a presentation which I think that they will be showing it. Just as a point of departure, I need to be indicating that the DPCI is currently investigating 105 matters that relate to Eskom. So these investigations are not necessarily emanating from the report that we are dealing with. We have already started the investigation way back. So in terms of the presentation based on the request that was submitted to us, starting with the table of contents, it will touch on the introduction, slight background, the structure of the intelligence report, which we just labeled it the Fivers report, the criminal allegations, the assessment documentation, and the multidisciplinary approach that we follow, and we will conclude with a way forward. As a matter of introduction, the purpose of this presentation is to appraise the Standing Committee on Public Accounts on the intelligence report commissioned by the former Chief Executive Officer on Eskom on the alleged sabotage. As a matter of background, the intelligence report obtained from the George Fivers report, Forensic Risk Investigation, were obtained. These reports were received by the national head of the DPCI, who had then handed them to the provincial head of the DPCI in Mpumalanga. So that report was received after we have came here in May, the day that we have indicated that there was also a report that purported to be an attempt to report in terms of Section 34 by the former GCEO. So after leaving this committee, when we went back, we engaged with General George Fivers, who provided us with the copy of the report. That is the first time that we obtained this. And it is this report that we then on the 22nd of June handed over to the provincial head of the DPCI in Mpumalanga. We also directed that they engage with the George Fivers, which they have done that. And based on this report, the provincial head obviously assigned the analyst, who is part of our Priority Crime Management Center. Those are the ones who analyze all these reports so that we can be informed precisely what is contained, that it can be seen the date on which that was done on the 28th of June. The aim of engagement between the DPCI in Mpumalanga and General George Fivers was to clarify certain issues that are raised in these reports. The report itself have got 348 individual intelligence reports. So looking at this, one can basically say that we had to go through 1,150 pages of this report to analyze so that we package them in such a way that it makes sense. From these individual intelligence reports, 23 liaison reports were received, and where all these individual intelligence reports were grouped and clustered together. That is because every day they will be submitting a different report. We had to consolidate this so that it makes sense, or precisely what is that which is contained in the report. So those were the work that were being done, and it was further observed that certain role players in this liaison report were implicated in multiple individual reports. So this report, they'll prepare one, and then the next time they prepare, they will also link in some of this. So one had to do analysis of all of those reports to try to make sense. How do they relate to each other? I'll then move to the overall criminal allegations. The reports include various criminal activities. We just list some of those. They include the dimensions with affect state-owned entity, the Eskom. That is, the first one is sabotage to Eskom infrastructure. So with regard to sabotage, sabotage by utilizing unemployed foreigners and or co-workers to sabotage or damage infrastructure, putting pressure on Eskom to utilize the emergency to fix the problem at a significant cost. The emergency procurement processes will be utilized to obtain contracts. And Eskom, obviously facing national emergency, may have no choice but to pay the excessive fees charged to address the emergencies. So those were part of what has been alleged to be sabotage. The sabotage by contractors in charge of maintenance who deliberately omitted basic maintenance with the aim to cause damage to infrastructure so that their services for providing additional maintenance can be required. As a result, it will benefit the contractors in charge of the maintenance. So those are part of the sabotage that are emanating, observed from the reports. The next aspect is procurement fraud and corruption. Intelligence report indicated that most companies that were identified belong to subject of the identified groupings, which were awarded contracts without following the correct procurement processes. So those are the various types of procurement fraud as well as corruption that shall have happened in awarding the contracts. So this will be appearing in several reports that we had to put together. In the next slide is what they term coal mafia. The activities of what they term coal mafia include the theft of coal associated with criminal practices. Multiple groups involved in illegal coal yards were identified in the intelligence report. Specific groups operating in and around power station in Mpumalanga were in these reports identified. So there were also prominent and influential persons that were mentioned. As the SIU have indicated, there are names that have been mentioned in these reports, and we have analyzed them and seen. But what we need is evidence to link them to specific crimes, which is what need to be happening. Part of what is happening is that there will be intimidation and the threats of violence towards Eskom members. Some will be extensive and life-threatening intimidation that are being raised by employees. Part of what we do is to look at the relationship between several individuals that are alleged to be involved, so that if it forms a syndicate, then we investigate in terms of the Prevention of Organized Crime Act. It is indicated in the reports that they are operating as a syndicate, but we need the elements to prove that, so that if one has to go to court, one will be able to show, to prove beyond reasonable doubt that indeed this individual committed offenses in terms of the Prevention of Organized Crime Act. In the next slide is the intelligence report, the documentation. This intelligence report are of similar in structure. The length is obviously different. There are those that have got 2 pages. There are those that are long, and you just have to read them. It would appear that on a daily basis, one will be compiling a report and depositing. So there are also diagrams that have been drawn as to who is linked with who. But again, this is not supported by evidence. So it's a sort of information which is information stroke intelligence, that you need evidence to show that X is linked with Y in doing what. So we have got those diagrams which we are working on. As to the assessment of this report, although the allegations towards entities, groupings, and individuals are not yet proved, the gathered information need to be corroborated. That is this corroboration that we are looking for. There is the potential that indeed some crimes may have been committed, which need to be proved, corroborated by way of affidavit and the like, in such a manner that we will be able to present something that the National Prosecuting Authority can be able to make a decision. So some of these things we will require affidavits that must be deposed of by the people inside Eskom who have got the know-how. Some of these things have happened. We are working in that direction. From the intelligence report, 10 groupings were identified by the DPCI in Mpumalanga. From the identified groupings, several subjects of interest associated to entities were identified. As we say, that the way in which you structure and group these individuals, because you are basing this on information, we may come with different numbers, but this is what the DPCI, when they assess in Mpumalanga, they said that there appears to be this number of groupings that are operating together. So they are continuing to analyze the information. So there is a need to collate and collect certain information that will assist in ensuring that the information at hand makes sense. In the next slide, we'll talk about how we normally deal with this type of matters. To handle this type of information, you have got to engage what we call multidisciplinary approach. This is a process that is supported by Section 17, capital letter F of the SAPS Act, that requires that we work in collaboration with other entities, not only in the DPCI, in other environment inclusive of the SIU, as the head have indicated. So we are working on this, and on the 27th of June, the Special Investigation Unit consulted with the provincial head, as the SIU shall have indicated. So there is that collaboration that is taking place. And indeed, there is always a willingness to be working together, which we do. Also in the National Priority Crime Operational Committee, we work together. So working together is a given. And I think that whatever they pick up as criminal matters will ultimately be referred to the NPA and us, so that we get what is needed to deal with criminal aspect while they are dealing with the civil portion of the same activities. With regard to the way forward, we are formalizing the multidisciplinary approach, which I said is supported by Section 17F of the Police Act. While we are working on this, you may find that at the beginning you do not have to create this, but you first gather certain information before you put up a fully fledged team. So the team usually consists of various disciplines, and you can expand this to crime intelligence, the revenue service, the financial intelligence center, the Eskom itself with regard to certain key role players who must depose of affidavit from within, as well as the National Prosecuting Authority will be guiding as to what is that which is needed for a decision to be made. So that speaks to what we can say with regard to the FIVA's report, or the report that we analyze. I think that the honorable members will recall previously when we indicated in this forum that there is also a report that was made by somebody else regarding the GCEO, who should have reported the matter to us. So that particular aspect still remains, that it is in that report that we should have obtained certain information which did not come out. So there is that portion, and the portion where one is supposed to be a complainant giving us this information. So basically that is how we treat all the information, that one could be both such a person who must explain and also a person who must actually become a witness. So that, I think, basically conclude the matter of the FIVA's report, as we shall have received and analyze it. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members.